This is AOS Shorts. Get better fast. Hello and welcome to another episode of AOS Shorts. Today I'm introduced by a very special guest, Mr. Chuck Moore. Mr. Chuck Moore is from Pennsylvania, USA, and a member of the US Age of Sigmar community team, who have recently released a very useful resource for the Age of Sigmar community, and that is the Player and Event Organiser Modular Pack. So I thought that given the release of this impressive document, we should get Chuck on and hear a bit more about it. So how are you going, Chuck?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, you're welcome. People may recognise you from Twitter and also your presence on TGA and on the rather good Realmgate blog, where you post hobby updates and various other things on Age of Sigmar twice a week. So if you haven't seen that, I highly recommend you check it out. But we're here today to have a talk about, as I said, the US Age of Sigmar Modular Community Pack, which, if you haven't had the chance to see it, is a document about 50 pages long with pretty much everything that you would need to know or consider if you are a tournament organiser intending on running an event for Age of Sigmar. It covers a range of things, all the different modules of things that you would take into consideration when building an event and running one. So, Chuck, do you want to get us started by introducing us?
Came about
tell us what
after
the pack
a
is,
meeting at
tell
a
us how it came about,
Games Workshop, as well
what
as
plans are.
Age of Sigmar community leaders and producers. There was a somewhat viral Twitter picture that went out after the meeting, but during that meeting we realized that we had struggles within the U.S. that are very unique due to this size of our country and how we're broken down into 5 or 6 regions, however you see it, or however our college football leagues decide to break it down. But the distance that we're all willing to travel to an event is so much larger than what it is in a lot of places in the world, perhaps as the exception. But we really wanted to talk with them, get a feel for what they felt our issues were, why we weren't on round bases wholly at the time, why maybe hobby standards were a little bit as opposed to the UK. And we really wanted to put the ownership of steer the ship, if you would, and we kind of formed the group naturally after that. We made a little Facebook group where we could communicate, had monthly calls in order to decide how can we help this community in the US specifically grow, expand, and just become more healthier as it has been somewhat naturally. So really it's moving, it's just how can we help push it a little bit farther. The first project we came up with was this modular pack, and well, maybe the title was slightly misleading. It's not aimed specifically for tournament organizers, but anyone brand new to Age of Sigmar or experienced veteran. So you can see how all 3 levels of play interact. By 3 levels, I mean the local, regional, and national level. It's really how our groups form in the United States. Local clubs will form, and then there'll be regional events that flock to it, such as National Cup, Midwest Meltdown, SoCal Open. And then obviously there's the 3 national events where we have NOVA, Adepticon, and Las Vegas Open. So how can each level support each other? How can it all work together? How can the local club understand what the difference in hobby as far as painting, sportsmanship, what can I expect when I'm going to a national event for the first time, or even a regional event? And how can I grow my local scene into a regional scene, and so on and so forth. So it's really meant to help every type of individual, whether you're a tournament organizer, local club, or national event. Now, the other thing I'd like to definitely clarify is in no way is this a date. This is all ideas. We give multiple variations of how you can do different types of things, such as maybe you should have house rules, maybe you shouldn't. Maybe your club's ready for a high level of painting. Maybe you still need to have bare bases on the table at the local level, but it's built so you can take different pieces, which is why we call them modules, take the pieces that suit your need or local club, and form the document that suits you guys, so you can use it to grow yourself and know what to expect as you naturally begin to grow more.
Excellent. I think that's a great introduction for it. And I certainly loved the pick and choose element of how you guys had set up the modules. For people who are listening that might be outside the US, perhaps it's worth just spending a couple of minutes just letting us know about the US scene as it is at the moment. So your pack deals with 3 levels: local, regional, and then you gave the names of the large, well-known national events which receive significant Games Workshop support and coverage. So if we're looking at the regional sort of level, can you tell us a bit more about the regional scene in the US at the moment, where the sort of areas of concentration are?
Absolutely. So the way I typically view it is a 5-region. Like I said, you can view it as a 6, but typically it's a 5-region country. So we have the Northeast, Southeast, Midwest, Northwest, and Southwest. Now, obviously, the Midwest is a very big scene with lots of great community leaders over there, but it's also different, whereas you have in the Southwest, which can go all the way from Texas to California. I decided to break that down. So those 5 areas are the draws for the local scenes to kind of rally together, and large events, like I got ready, so Midwest Meltdown, NashCon, Slaughter Doctor GT, SoCal Open, Renegade Open is another one, I think, in the Northeast. So they're wanting to draw from their regions with hopes, I believe, to eventually become larger and bigger like the national scene. So it's that standard transition where even the national events here all started as a local event.
Oh, very good. And I imagine that historically, due to the geographic and logistical differences, you haven't had much of the way of crossover at those regional events, and it's only at the sort of large national events that you get players from across the country flying in for things like Adepticon.
Very much so. Now, there is exceptions to that. We're willing to drive in the U.S. We're used to it. For instance, my daily commute to work is about an hour and 10 minutes one way. So driving 3 hours to Nova Open for me is nothing. Driving to Adepticon, which is about 9 hours for me, is burdensome but not undoable in a straight line, or straight drive, I should say. But back to, I suppose, how we compare to the U.S. and how this kind of made us realize that our issues are very unique is if you look at the UK, there's lots of people over there that an hour and a half drive is too long to drive for a 2-day event. Whereas I would drive back and forth to that, no problem. So it really made them create a melting pot. So you can theoretically look and see how our regions themselves might be similar to the UK, as far as the same people, the same group, always kind of cycling and fixing to improve each other. But doing these national events, each region will kind of develop its own style in a way, if you will. So, and I don't want to put any sort of words in any region's mouth, but if you look at people who play in the Midwest, they typically have a stronger competitive advantage just because of how they play and how they might have evolved, as opposed to maybe the Southeast. And like I said, just an example. I'm not trying to say the Southeast isn't competitive. Just the first thing that came to mind.
Yeah, look, I hope that the people listening aren't going to hold you to any particular stereotypes or generalizations. And I thought it was very interesting that on the very first bit of your pack, the sort of overarching theme is this idea of unifying without homogenizing, which from an outsider's perspective I took as representing the distinct aspects of each scene, but trying to help and aid all by sharing knowledge and experience from each of the different regions across the US. Is that a fair summation of the sort of ethos and theme that you guys are going for?
Very much so. The goal is to make sure no matter where anyone in the country will go to, no matter what event, they're going to go and they're going to be playing Age of Sigmar. It will feel like Age of Sigmar. Think back to the old Fantasy 8th edition where there was no comp, there was Swedish comp. And my understanding, they felt very different. Whereas right now, I think we're in a very healthy space as a community and the game system because it feels like we're playing Age of Sigmar no matter where you go. Now, at the same time, one of the strengths is the fact that we do have these 5 regions, and it allows us to diversify ourselves as we mix and take things away. So when I go to Adepticon, I come back with different appreciations as opposed to if I went to Nova Open. So not stifling the differences that make up each region, but encouraging the game itself and making sure it's all the same game. Perhaps it's not explained entirely clearly, but That's the goal, to make sure that we are individuals but going in the same direction.
No, I think you were very clear. There's certainly an aspect with Age of Sigmar compared to sort of 8th edition fantasy and where it got to, in that largely there is a homogeneity about how we approach the game. From what I've seen, most tournaments have had very little in the way of at least house rules or comp restrictions on army building, for instance, which had developed up over time in Warhammer Fantasy in 8th edition, basically just to ensure some form of competitiveness and greater balance across the system. Now, we've been quite lucky in Age of Sigmar that to an extent this hasn't really been necessary to put this sort of heavy community layer on top. And of course, I'm not suggesting that's what the pack is doing, because it's clearly not doing that. But it's just, that's the interest, is that we've had quite a light touch all the way through Age of Sigmar so far.
Yeah, the interesting thing, back when Age of Sigmar dropped in and the scene really just evaporated out from so many of us, in hindsight, it was probably an unintentional blessing to the community, because the community that stayed with it and pushed on through and began rebuilding really set a foundation for being a strong community that cares about each other on many levels, and really wants to help each other, as opposed to individual paths that everyone wants to take and their own agenda. So I think, in hindsight, thinking back on that, it was a very, very hard blessing, but yeah, I think it made us stronger where we are today because of it.
Yeah, good to hear. One of the things that you touched on at the beginning was that you said that this pack had come out of effectively that meeting back at Adepticon between members of the US scene and Games Workshop staff, etc., members of the Warhammer community team. Would you be able to tell us a bit more about who are the members of the group? So if people are listening at home and wondering, well, actually, who is behind this community group?
There's about 20, 22 of us within it. And it's everyone you could probably think of, from playtesters to podcasters to bloggers to TOs.
I'm assuming you've got a fairly representative group from across the various scenes, or is it sort of you guys have started and you're looking to sort of expand and work with other groups within the US scene?
So it is represented across all the regions, across people who are leading the community in their own way. But it's not a set in stone group. Everyone contributes to different projects. Everyone contributes to different things that's going on, which is why the pack doesn't have everybody included, because some people are doing many other great projects, and really the group itself could add people over time without any concern. And it's become more of a place for us all to connect, to make sure we keep this unifying, homogenizing on pace.
Okay, so after that sort of introduction, Chuck, if you'd be able to just tell us a bit more about the detail of the pack. What are the various modules that are in there? What are the things that people can pick and choose from? And sort of, what have you covered? What do each of them give for players and TOs alike?
Gladly. So obviously at the very beginning, there's the pack statement, how to use this document, which if you're listening to this, you could probably skip as you go forward. The first module we have is social interaction and community growth. And what that is how to grow your scene at the levels, how to interact with maybe the larger scenes and connect to help encourage the positive growth within your community. Following that, we have the player responsibility module. And this is in there mostly to help players like myself last year when I went to my first Adepticon. Would have had no idea of what to do, essentially, without thoroughly reading the pack and asking questions for people who have gone before about display boards, painting standards, even just simple things that maybe brand new players don't realize. Bring your own dice, bring your own tape measure, bring your own rules, other things like that.
I think you can never underestimate this sort of material, the sort of what to bring to your first tournament, the things to make sure, all the simple sort of practical stuff, which just makes your first tournament experience so much more enjoyable, so much easier and so much more
Absolutely.
stress-free.
Even the recommendation, I can't remember if it's in there, but bring snacks. It's a long day of gaming usually, so having a snack to keep your energy levels up is also a good responsibility to add to that list. Beyond that, we go back more towards a community leader or TO focus with choosing a venue. So within the US, we do have different options from around the world. I know in the UK, after school groups are a big thing, but here in the US, not so much because we have so many large, friendly local game stores. There's also places like youth centers, sometimes VFDs. My local group plays in the basement of a church because one of the players is the pastor's son, and it works out great. We also have public libraries where you can easily work out some arrangements to play. And if you have a store nearby or a house nearby to store the terrain, because really you just need tables and a space. So it helps with that on the various levels. So as you grow to a regional level and a national level, about looking at making sure there's food nearby, hotels nearby, easy access to get from a highway or from an airport.
Certainly the size of your friendly local gaming stores is the envy of the rest of the world, as space seems to be relatively cheap in the US. And you can have these large game stores with plenty of space for tables, whilst the rest of us in the UK and New Zealand are sort of crammed into some little tables in the back room of a shop.
I'm sure even the fact that I'm currently sitting in the middle of 3 hobby tables with models and paint sprawled everywhere is more than most hobbyists have, might possibly over in the UK.
Yeah, definitely.
So we next go and take a look at the terrain module. And this is one that, while the suggestion is there, it's pretty sobering to realize that at all levels, perhaps the level of terrain that should be on the table isn't there. As gamers, we think about the scenarios and how armies interact with it, but very few will actually also consider how the terrain will interact with it, because some events have so few. Now, some of that is as a holdover because they're still moving up from 8. At the national events, I know Games Workshop's been very key with helping them improve their scenery levels. So hopefully going forward, we'll see more and more line of sight blocking terrain and different lanes created by having more and more fantastic terrain on the table. But the hope is to make it available so even at the local level, you're practicing with more than just a few hills, unless you're playing on the kitchen table and it's your very first few games. But the more the better, it seems, for the most part.
Yeah, one of the advantages of Age of Sigmar is just how much freer you can be with terrain and how much more you can have on the board. You can have these really great looking tables with sort of 10 plus or 8 to 10 pieces of terrain, much denser than what you used to have under Fantasy Battle. One of the things that I'm interested in, you've got a sort of diagrammatic example of what a reasonable amount of terrain or a fairly heavy saturation of terrain would look like on a board. Do you think that we'll ever progress to the point where we'll have, like other systems, have defined terrain maps for tournaments, in terms of particular setouts and layouts of terrain which are considered either fair or challenging?
I think the key for looking at, let's say, the national level events is they'll always make sure it's balanced. So it's a mirror image no matter which side you're on, to take away that key advantage of, I want to switch sides because your side has more terrain. At local levels and more open play and even narrative play, I think by placing down maps such as that would be fantastic. So you can really help tell the story through the table a lot more as opposed to through the game itself, because the scenery interacts with the game so much. But as far as large and competitive events, I wouldn't see that happening. I would see the TOs constantly looking to set up a standard mirror image with the scenery they have available. So each table will always have the same amount of scenery, will always have the same size and line of sight blocking to the best of their ability.
Out of interest, do most of the large events in the US have their own terrain, or is it like some of the events in the UK where players are encouraged to bring 3 or 4 pieces of terrain as part of their attendance at the tournament?
Honestly, all of our national events have their own terrain, whether they're getting help from a company or building it themselves within their own community that's close to that national event. And I guess it's also the blessing of space is we can feasibly store that terrain for an entire year without any sort of issue, very cheaply, if not for nothing, depending on the different venues. But I believe our leaders at the national events have been doing a fantastic job, because the only scenery you need to bring is your special scenery, so your Sylvan and Wildwoods, or your Feculent Gnarl Moss, for example, or your summoning of a Balewind Vortex.
Very good. Should we move on to discuss the painting module?
Yes, and this is a very, very in-depth module, and I have to give a lot of credit to Vince Venturella of Warhammer Weekly. He put a lot of time and part of his soul into this as well. Now, this might be viewed in some ways a bit controversial, because it is a place where we as a group kind of took a small stand, because we really want to see the hobby level of painting improve. It's been a big issue for myself at my local level, is constantly trying to encourage the painting. It's a constant reminder and honestly nagging to your group. But by structuring painting in a way, you can actually help grow it. So there's more and more beautiful painted armies on the table. Now, we were behind, I guess I could say, as a community here in the U.S., simply because there's more people coming back. So they're still testing the water, so they're still on very square basis for the longest time. And actually, I think this year with LVO, Adepticon, and Nova Open will be the first year that all three major events require fully painted and round basing to be an appropriate base size. So module very in depth. Give it a look. It does break it down into many various levels, and we recommend what a local, regional, national would look like. But this is one very much where you could be a local level community, but you could be painting it at a quote unquote national level scene with how you're handling your events.
It's always an interesting challenge, I find, with painting, because what you're trying to balance is accessibility for new or returning players versus actually having an attractive product that both the current players and new players will want to play. It's not as attractive looking across the table and seeing a whole load of grey models or proxied models, when it's a completely different proposition if you're seeing two beautifully painted armies on a mat on decent terrain.
Yeah, and we really want to make sure we emphasize effort as far as skill. There's fantastic painters out there that can make amazing looking armies, and there's people out there like myself. I can push out armies of 120 witch elves in no time, but they're probably not going to be winning any awards. But I'm still putting forth as much effort as I possibly can into it, and constantly trying to improve. So it's about rewarding effort, and making sure that the social contract of, we put forth what went out of this together. So when you show up to the table with a stranger, you know that they did the best they could in that army to make sure that this game looks as great as it can be.
Yeah, I think that's the right balance. Is you definitely want to encourage effort, and to some extent you also want to reward those top level painters, because many hobbyists, that is the hobby that they're enjoying, is pushing those painting skills both at an individual model and at a army wide level. So it's accommodating for both, and I see certainly the pack that you've got here does that.
And in a way, it's also a move away from the standard 3-color minimum, which there's always those men and women who want to quote unquote game the system with that. Really, it should be considered anymore, I feel, a painting tabletop standard, as opposed to just calling it the 3-color minimum.
Very good. Okay, so was there anything else that we needed to cover off on the paint module?
No, I think that's everything. Just give it a look.
Cool. Okay, let's move on through.
So next up, we have the narrative module, and this was something that we couldn't leave off. I tried to balance myself and play competitively as well as narrative events. For example, I'll go play in a GT, but I'm going to be running the Coalescence events in my local group, and I want to make sure that narrative had its due. So we are all very happy to make sure this module is in there. Just what to expect, its differences, and ideas. And credit to this one will actually go to Aaron Bostian. he's in charge of the We Are the Neon blog currently, and he he also is in charge of organizing the AOS narrative at Nova Open. So he has a good track record on how to handle narrative events, and it's very much a relaxed module, I should say, because it's more about trying to talk to the person who's reading it as opposed to listing out, which some other of the modules can do based upon the nature of them. So if you've ever thought about narrative, or even if you never have, definitely give it a look through, because narrative gaming can be lots of fun, and you can blend it with competitive gaming pretty naturally if you give it some time.
No, certainly, and that We Are the Neon website has a range of useful articles I've seen before in terms of organising and running narrative events, in terms of finding locations, talking to your players, putting packs together. There's certainly a lot of useful resources on there as well, certainly in the lead up to Coalescence this year.
Right, narrative is definitely about having that conversation with the players that are coming, either through your pack or through more direct means, to make sure that they know what the event is and how to have fun at it, as opposed to what we all know typically about how to have fun at a grand tournament is to bring a good competitive list and try to win. And after that, we move into the scenario selection module.
Yeah, I'm interested in seeing this. The US scene, certainly from my impression, has had the most variety in terms of alternative or custom scenarios at tournaments and large events. There's certainly a lot of good work coming out of the US scene on expanding the types of match play scenarios that we see.
Right, and really this module is just all about that, how to choose the type of scenarios for your event or your club based upon what type of event or game day you want to have. I mean, it's really open, and there's great tools out there now, such as the Open War deck that Games Workshop put out, that is very easy for anyone to go pick up, choosing a point level and playing games right away and making it unique and fun, as well as the General's Handbook every year, where we get brand new missions and scenarios to play, be they narrative or for the competitive level. So it's another great little module. Definitely give it a look through. As you can see, Bill Costello did a lot to put his heart and soul into this as well. So definitely give this one a look through. It's worth your while to make sure your group is playing how you feel that they want to play, whether it's narrative, competitive, open, a mix of all of it.
Very cool. We now sort of move on to the next section, which is probably the closest thing to one of the old fantasy tournament packs in terms of the house rules modules, which will be permanently under supervision, review, and consideration, I would imagine. So do you want to explain what's covered off in the house rules section?
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. This will be the most updated module, without a doubt, as far as the small little updates here and there. But really, it's about maybe some of those controversial things that pop up. Should you allow Balewind Vortex in your event, or should you alter it? So, for the perfect example, you can allow Balewind Vortex, which means players can bring it, they can drop right out of objective, do that sort of shenanigans. You can ban it, which a lot of events did early on because we weren't sure how to handle it. We weren't sure how the game was going, so it was easier to just leave that out of the entire meta equation. Or this year, where I believe Adepticon as well as Nova Open are planning on allowing it, but you have to be so many inches away from an objective. So different things such as that, how to handle perhaps those broken armies, such as Vanguard Wing used to be. Do you allow it? Do you alter it? So really taking suggestions and thoughts and giving the ownership to who's ever reading this pack to go, okay, well, for my event, I don't think we should have this because this really takes away fun of the game. Or maybe the fun for your group is to allow that in-depth trying to break everything to the 10th degree and moving from there. So there is things in there that I guess people could view controversial as one way or the other and be very passionate about one or the other, but once again, like I said, this is all suggestions just to help people think about what they want to do for their events and for their communities, not necessarily this is what you need to do.
And I think that's a valuable thing. A lot of this is putting these issues on the radar so they can be actively considered by the tournament organizer and the players that are going to attend the event before they attend the event. Because no one wants to have some of these issues turn up in sort of game 3 or whatever of the tournament, and the TO's having to make a ruling on the spot. You're going to have a winner and a loser in relation to the rules issue, and someone is going to be dissatisfied in some form. So it's better to flush these issues out early and have sort of clear expectations going into the event rather than have them pop up on the day.
Right, and this module really helps the TO event organizer or club leader really start that social contract early with his players. That's what it's about. You need to present the type of event you want to run, and the players need to clearly understand the event you want, the type of event you wish to run as well. So by tackling these issues early on, hopefully help create
one of the things that we did locally down here under General's Handbook 2016 was sort of put together a New Zealand community FAQ for a number of sort of issues and questions that came up, which didn't have an official FAQ answer, but we just wanted to make sure that the scene had discussed and had a sort of suggested answer for these, so that people would know when they were writing army lists for their next tournament how it was likely to be ruled.
Yeah, that's excellent. It's great that it was done as a community too. I'm a big community fan.
Community. There were a few of us that sort of put it together and then shared, but that always tends to be the way. Okay, Jay, next. Now we're also going to move into perhaps another fairly well-discussed topic with a variety of views, and that's sportsmanship. So normally there's a whole number of different ways that sportsmanship can be dealt with in a tournament, whole range of different expectations about what is good sportsmanship. Does it include things like list design? Does it take into account your opponent's enjoyment of the game? Or is it simply things like etiquette in terms of dice rolling, communication around movement, those sorts of things? So I know this certainly can be a quite controversial topic as well. So sort of what are the things that you've covered off in your sportsmanship module?
Really, it was just giving the awareness of those different types of how to look at scoring, how to be prepared for it. And perhaps regionally, this is one of our biggest separations. Some areas might go, if you had a good game, you just mark a 5. Other areas of 5 means you want to go have beers with this guy after and hang out and become the best man in his wedding. So it's really a matter of making sure too that the TOs clearly express how they want you to score your opponent, because it's a very subjective thing, and it's going to be a constantly changing issue. For instance, you could add different layers on top of it. So perhaps if new horde meta, maybe slow play comes to more of a head, like it seems to be in 40K right now. Well, how do we handle that on the sportsmanship? Is sportsmanship necessary? If you're playing with a couple friends in your basement, you're already good friends, so sportsmanship's probably nothing you need to worry about. But when you're at a national event and the TO has 200 people and they need to score each other based on a subjective item, it can be a very daunting task. So, and I guess what I can say is there really is no answer. So the pack doesn't really try to tackle and give us an answer. It just tries to give awareness out there for that specific module.
Yeah, it's very much sort of pick the approach that you want to take, communicate it clearly to the attendees in advance of the event, make sure it's clear in the pack, reiterate it on the day in relation to scoring, just so that you can try and get some level of consistency, because there's nothing worse at a tournament to have gone through all of that and then find that sort of half the player field have judged on one basis, half the player field have judged on the other basis, and it's actually had a significant effect on the final standings. You want to make sure that it's clear.
This also ties back to the player responsibility module too, because probably the biggest responsibility players need to have is show up with a good attitude and wanting to play this game. and then sportsmanship won't be an issue for you.
Oh, I always like to assume that everybody's going to turn up being a sort of reasonable human being. I would like to think that I could take that for granted. We're sort of all adults. Just even reasonable adults can have different interpretations of sports packs, depending on how it goes. Anyway, so the sort of final module you had was the scoring module. So what does that cover?
It covers the different ways you can score an event. It kind of breaks down, win, loss, draw, 20-0, which is a 20-0 scoring system, as well as how to do what Swiss pairings are. Do you need to use them? And items like that. It's really exciting as myself, personal experience as a new community leader in my local community running events. I set up a one-day tournament, and the first game was going, and then I realized I don't know how I'm going to pair people after the next round. It was the easiest thing to look over. So it's very much, are you a narrative event? Well, you can do random pairings. You can make pairings based upon what armies are there and what cool battles they could be thematically. But if you're a competitive event, well, maybe you're going to be using 20-0 with secondary and tertiary objectives, as well as using a Swiss pairing. So it really just tries to present the options so you can take a comfort level to make sure that you're running a fair event based on the type of event you want to run.
Yeah, it's very important. And certainly in relation to the match play end of the spectrum, there's always a bit of debate about how much you put on a major win versus a minor win, how much you put on a minor loss versus a major loss in terms of points, because how that goes can actually really affect even the type of army that you bring to the event. Because if there isn't a sufficient incentive to go for a major win over a minor, then you might have a more resilient, grindy list, which won't give up games, won't give up points, won't get moved off objectives, but isn't going to go and smash your opponent off the board. But if you really incentivize major victories, then you might get much more of a sort of smash face list. So all of that stuff comes into play.
To wrap up the pack with the final two modules, there is the reference and source module, which has links to various tools and events and perhaps other groups across the community that may be beneficial or were referenced in some way throughout this pack. And this module will be updated more and more regularly as the health of the scene community grows. And last, there's the most important, is the pack credits and contributors module. And I say module, but really it's to give credit to those who worked on this pack. I can't thank them enough for their time and energy. It lists what they worked on a little more specifically. I can't thank them enough, as well as Games Workshop, for having that initial meeting and being so open and honest with our community globally, as well as just wanting to hear what our problems are and encouraging us to help take control of it, and as well as the group as a whole as we grow. We all like to communicate and support each other, whether we work on one project or another. It's great to have that communication open amongst everybody across the whole U.S. at various levels of contribution.
Yeah, certainly. It's a very exciting project. And look, I can't imagine the amount of work that you guys must have put in to get it to this far and get it up off the ground. It's certainly a mighty effort. So in terms of if people have got feedback or comments or suggestions in relation to the pack, how do they get in touch with you guys?
Well, the easiest and direct source is actually to go to site.google.com/view/US AOS community group. Not the easiest web page title, but I hope to improve that in the future. But that will be the current location of the document, where we'll update it. And on there's links to our email, which is the usaoscommunity@gmail.com. And you're welcome to send any feedback, questions, really anything to there. We'll happily respond as quickly as possible. And also, you have a very basic Google Calendar. And this will be here until someone works up something better, which I'm sure will happen. But if you have an event that you'd like to be listed on that email address and give us all the details, who the contact is, website, and we'll add it to the calendar. And hopefully this can also be a resource amongst the U.S. So whether you're local, regional, or above, you can see different events going on in a centralized location, whether it's narrative event, competitive event, ITC event, or not.
And it's certainly good to have one of those central calendars that people can see what's available. So in terms of the pack, do we know, have we got events coming down the track that we're going to see using elements of this pack, incorporating it into their own?
As far as major events, I can confirm that the Nova Open Grand Tournament, as well as the doubles, will be using elements of this pack. I can confirm that because I have been given the honor of being the TO for Nova Open for those two events. So
I was going to say, I thought I saw you nominated for that.
I put it as a small side note. It's I was, in all honesty, last year at Nova Open, I was probably the most critical of the fact that there were square bases and unpainted armies allowed to play, and the fact that we weren't using the current General's Handbook. Not to take anything away from the great TO from last year, because he did a fantastic job. But I really felt at a national level, you should be leading instead of following. So when that TO was unable to take the event this year, I was kind of brought up, and it was put up or shut up. I decided to put up, and I plan to use parts of this pack to help create that event going forward, as long as I'm selected to be the TO.
Oh, great. And so where, for those of us who aren't familiar with it, where and when is the Nova Open?
So the Nova Open will be August 30th, September 2nd, which is Labor Day weekend, down in the DC metro area. And if you go to novaopen.com, you can register, which opens March 1st, as well as see the exact location and hotel where you can book a room, and hopefully you'll be able to join us for some fun Age of Sigmar.
Excellent. Great. I'll put links to Nova Open and the community pack and the website all in the show notes so that people can see. Did you have any final thoughts or comments that you wanted to share?
I just want to thank the people that worked on this pack once again, as well as the open communication Games Workshop has given us and encouraged us to form the group to tackle these issues. It's been a pleasure to work with individuals across the country on not just this project, but other various projects, and really develop a friendship with all of them. So I can't thank them enough. Even though people are saying I'm the one that herded the cats. Well, if the cats weren't as good as they are, it wouldn't be as worthwhile as a pack, I believe.
The final thing I was going to say, if people want to find you on the internet, check out your blog, see what your hobby doing, see that Daughters of Cain progress, where can they find you?
To find me on my blog, you can just Google the Realmgate blog. The address itself is therealmgate.blogspot.com.
Cool. Very good. Thank you very much for joining me. And for people at home, thank you very much for listening. If you've got any questions or comments or feedback, feel free to send it through to Chuck and the wider team. Interested in any thoughts you've got or any experiences that other people have for similar community packs in their countries or their regions. Really interested to see what other people are doing. Because the more we can share ideas, the more we can get experiences that we can take and use in our own local scenes. If you want to get hold of me, you can always find me on Twitter at Antipodean7, Antipodean7, at AOS Shorts on Facebook or aosshorts.com. Anyway, thank you very much for listening, and bye for now.